Baby, CreepTime the podcast is going on tour and coming to a city near you.
So head over to creeptime.com to get your tickets to come see CreepTime live.
Well, you can't trust County.
And we're on air. And
That we are, honey.
In the full holiday swing.
How do you feel?
I was going to ask the same. I feel very calm this holiday season. I don't know why.
Serene. Did you do all your gift shopping early? Is that what it was? Is that how you got through it?
That could be part of it. Although I still, they're not going to listen to this, so it doesn't matter. But my two younger brothers haven't gotten them a thing yet. Can we just hard to shop
Can
for.
we just acknowledge that is a very unique thing that we have, where we have a very public platform that we can guarantee certain people in our life do not listen to.
It's really funny.
I know I could say almost anything about my brother on here, and he will never hear it. It will never get back to him. That's incredible.
Until one day we're going to wake up and it's going to be like, hey, we're having a family intervention from all of the crap that you've been talking on CreepTime.
You know, it's gonna be Marvel Movie Talk. That kid who does all the cut downs, he's gonna do compilations of all the stuff we say.
Baby, don't do it. Don't do it. Keep it to the cackles. Keep it to the sound bites.
Keep it in the inner circle, baby. Just
keep it in the inner circle, baby. Well, I've got a case for you today that is sure to throw you. It is incredibly unnerving to me because it feels slightly Aunt Diane adjacent, or maybe even like a little Lars Matank. It's a very interesting case. There's potentially like a midlife crisis happening, a potential psychological break, or maybe something even darker. But today's case revolves around a 51-year-old woman that went missing while accompanying her husband on a business trip. Have you ever heard of the case of Judy Smith?
No, I don't think so. She was with her husband, though.
She was with her husband, and then it takes the weirdest of turns, but by all accounts, it should have been a really fun, like, business mixed with pleasure trip. But there are some signs, I think, at the beginning that you and I can break down and unpack, and maybe there was something more, like, nefarious at play here, but super weird. Happened in the 90s. It kind of feels like it should have happened around this time of year, but it didn't. But it's a very strange case. So, and I'll just kind of get straight to it today. But before I do, let me just say, welcome back, creepers. And I think when this episode comes out, it's going to be the week after Christmas. We're going to be in that really weird limbo phase where everybody becomes a zombie.
Yeah, well, we're not really sure like what our jobs are, who's employed, who's not. We're all 25 pounds heavier.
Exactly. I'll forget who I am. And actually, this year, I think that it's going to come out. This episode should come out when like Hanukkah is starting. And even Kwanzaa maybe too, but I know Hanukkah is late this year. It's going to be like right when this episode comes out.
I was talking to Hannah about it, and I was confused because I had celebrated Hanukkah with Jen like years ago in the apartment. Jim's Jewish, and we did the candles and we did the prayers. But I remember doing it so much earlier in December. It was like December, the first week of December.
I always think of it as like starting right at December 1st, but I guess this year's really, really late though. But yeah, happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa.
Hanukkah,
you're probably celebrating that right now when this comes out. And if you are new here, welcome to CreepTime the podcast, baby. I am Stu, and this is the newly mustacheless Silas team.
It's again, it is purely gone for said costume, which will be seen sure enough.
Oh, yes. This will be coming out after our Christmas episode. But if you haven't watched that, go back and watch it. And yeah, I should just mention, since we've been mentioning it with all of our episodes that have come out recently, make sure to go watch us on YouTube and Spotify if you're not tuned into the video eps, because that's a new format for us, that we're on video now, and it's super fun to interact with each other this way, but with y'all as well. It's super fun to get to switch it up a little bit now. And if you're new, please follow us on Apple or Spotify. Make sure you hit that bell notification, baby, so you always get an alert when we drop new episodes. And if you like this episode, please leave us a review. Those reviews help us grow the show so much. You can do it on Spotify. You can do it on Apple. And it's also just like selfishly fun for us to go read the reviews and laugh at some of the hate comments that come in, but that's okay.
I love them, baby. Listen, it's just
baby.
extraordinarily polar. It's either like we've pulled people out of the deepest, darkest depression of their lives, or
exactly.
we're two of the ugliest people who have ever walked into
that's
a room.
Right.
It's extraordinarily polar.
It's extraordinarily polarizing. But, you know, with all that being said, I just want to take a moment to also just say to the Creepers, because we're wrapping up 2024, thank you so much for making this year such a big success for us. Like, we have been doing this for about a little over 2 years now. I don't think that Silas and I ever thought that it would get to the listenership that it has. It's just, I mean, I know that we probably did, we hoped, but it's just been such a crazy ride. And I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in every week. It means the world to us. And we're so excited to do more of it in 2025. We're so lucky.
Yeah, we are so lucky. Thank you again, really, to all the Creepers. I think I can speak for both of us that we didn't anticipate we would have such a loyal audience. Like, they are so smart and so driven by these stories and so involved in the cases that we tell that really, I can't even tell you guys from our perspective, it makes it so much more exciting and enriching to talk about these stories because we know that you're engaged with them. We know that you want to talk about them.
Yes. And all of those comments that y'all send in and the Reddit interactions, like, keep them coming. They just make us just motivate us each week to keep bringing you, you know, these types of really engaging stories. So with that being said, baby, are you ready?
I am very ready. One last thing,
right.
Just since you mentioned that we're going into January, starting in January, I'm not sure of the exact date, but that's when Spotify is going to switch over to ad-free video for a period of time, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, hats off to anybody who wants to switch over from Amazon or Apple. If you want to come watch CreepTime the podcast, these are full-on video episodes, and you can watch them ad-free on Spotify starting in Jan 2025.
Yeah, which is sick. I mean, I might even make the switch. It's so funny that we're such a Spotify heavy podcast. Meanwhile, I'm still psycho on Apple Podcast as well.
You're like a good test subject though, because we can see what it will actually take to win you over.
Exactly.
To choose Spotify.
Our Spotify partnerships manager is like, girl, get it together.
I actually haven't asked. I wonder what she would say about that. I don't know if she knows.
Yeah, well, now she does.
Marvel movie talk. Keep it quiet.
I know. Keep it quiet, baby.
Nothing.
Close those lips. Okay. So first, let me just give you a little bit of a backstory on Judy before we get to that business trip and the craziness that surrounds her mysterious disappearance. So Judy Smith, and I should just mention, I dropped you a link to a Canva doc, which Creepers will share on Reddit, which has some visuals of Judy and a couple other things that pertain to the case. But feel free to just go ahead and open that. Maybe just stick on the first page for right now.
Okay, sure.
But Judy Smith was born in December 1946 in Hyannis, Massachusetts. And Judy was described as a natural caregiver. She was very loving, very kind, very patient. And that would ultimately play a part in determining her career choice to become a caregiver to the elderly later on in life. But before she embarked on that career, her plan was to become a housewife. So she ended up getting married at quite a young age. I think she was 18 to her high school sweetheart, right?
That is the youngest age.
The youngest age. Well, I guess unless you get special permission in some of the parts where I'm from. But
that I can't take
I know.
that.
I know. But unfortunately, that marriage did not last very long. Her first husband ended up leaving her unexpectedly. This was pretty nuts, but he wanted to avoid the Vietnam War draft, so he fled to another country and left Judy behind. I can't imagine the shock that would induce on such a young woman at 18. I mean, that in and of itself must have been very traumatic, but it wasn't long after this that she ended up meeting her second husband, a man named Charles Bradford, and the two of them had two children named Amy and Craig, who I think you can see a picture of on that first page. Now, unfortunately, Judy wasn't the luckiest in love. I'm not sure what happened that ended her second marriage, but Charles and Judy ended up divorcing in, I'm going to guess, the early 80s. I couldn't find an exact year. But Judy was going to be a single mother to 2 young kids now. And she wanted to create, a nice, stable life for her children. But with no college degree, she was going to have a really tough time making ends meet. So she decided to pursue a career she had always wanted to, which was caregiving. And like I mentioned earlier, she was described as a really empathetic person, and she had this dream of becoming a nurse. So she decided to work her butt off and put herself through college while raising Amy and Craig. And she ended up earning her nursing degree by 1986. And she eventually decided that she wanted to be a homemade nurse to the elderly. And one of her patients would eventually lead her to meeting her soon-to-be third husband, who much of the story centers around a man named Jeffrey Smith. And I should also mention that Judy and her children had been living in Boston, Massachusetts at this point, and that was where she would also meet Jeffrey. Now, Jeffrey Smith's Boston-based father was elderly and recovering from throat surgery, and his dad required the care of an in-home nurse. And I don't think Judy was there 24/7, but she was definitely there a lot, something close to that. And it's really weird how innocently these two fell in love in the context of how sinister Judy's disappearance will feel. But by all accounts, the way that they fell in love felt like something out of a rom-com. Jeffrey had come over to visit his father after the surgery, and from everything I've read, had a pretty immediate attraction to Judy. But he sort of let it be a slow burn. And I think he did this. He found ways to kind of make himself available to come over. He would make his visits more frequent, but he definitely courted Judy very slowly. And they ended up dating for close to 10 years before they eventually got married.
Wow. Was his father alive the whole time, do you think? Or what was it?
I believe so. I didn't read anywhere that he passed away. I think he was alive that entire time that they were courting.
That is slow, though. What, 10 years of dating?
10 years. Which, we'll kind of unpack, but it might say a little something about that trauma she'd experienced from those first couple of marriages and just wanted to take it slow and make sure that this guy was like really who he said he was. But they did build a very strong connection. And Jeffrey was a very successful lawyer with kids of his own from his previous marriage. So I think he had his own thing going on that kind of made her feel like she wasn't going to lose her independence by being married to him. And he respected her career and her love for caregiving, and he observed her passion for it in real time. So I think that kind of helped to ease her into the idea of getting married again. And the two of them ended up getting married in November of 1996. So before I press on and take us into 1997, when Judy ends up disappearing and everything kind of goes down, what do you make of her and her husband, Jeffrey? And are you getting any sort of initial feelings just from the looks of them together or kind of that initial meeting?
I mean, she just looks like a very happy and content, kind of adjusted person. And I know that appearances can be deceiving. I was actually initially surprised that Judy's son was not Jeffrey's because he kind of looks similar to Jeffrey.
I thought the exact same thing. That's so funny you said that. I thought the exact same thing when I saw that photograph of them. I was like, oh, that must be her son from the previous marriage, but that's Craig from her second marriage.
From the latter marriage, you mean? From Jeffrey?
Yes.
Because that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just this like really eerie feeling kind of looking at how happy she is and trying to figure out like what could have gone down here and whether or not my instincts are correct in that Jeffrey is possibly suspicious.
We'll see, baby.
Okay.
I mean, it's really weird. It's very hard to tell, even with everything I know, like how I feel about Jeffrey, because also in videos, Jeffrey is just as kind of jolly as maybe like you're perceiving from Judy as well. Like by all accounts, he seemed just as like happy. Everything's perfect. And people said that about Judy too, that she was super happy demeanor. So yeah, it's almost like is it too good to be true sort of a thing.
Like could appearances be deceiving?
Yeah.
And also, I just want to mention, it's such a noble profession. I feel like I can't remember many cases we've covered where somebody is like an in-home caregiver like that.
Yeah.
Because I grew up with very elderly grandparents and very elderly like great aunts and uncles, and so I was around like in-home caregivers so much when I was younger.
Yeah.
It is such a noble profession to do that.
Yeah. And it takes such a certain type of person to be able to give themselves like that, because it's not glamorous. I'm sure as you witnessed.
It takes a lot of patience and
yes,
a lot
so
of like
much patience.
genuine care to like give somebody dignity in their care.
Yeah, it's not the type of profession you just like stumble into.
And it's so needed too, and they're in such short supply.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, the meat of the case really begins with that business trip taken by Jeffrey, in which Judy decided to accompany him. So, in April of 1997, only about 5 months into their marriage, Jeffrey had this business trip planned to go to Philadelphia. And at the time, Jeffrey was working in corporate law for Northeast Pharmaceutical Conference, and they were going to have a conference where Jeffrey would be speaking on a panel of sorts at the DoubleTree Hotel in downtown Philadelphia. And I'm not sure what he would be speaking about exactly, but the Northeast Pharmaceutical Conference was comprised of different pharmaceutical researchers and like big pharma execs, so I'm sure something related to that. Now, Judy really enjoyed traveling, and since she had never been to Philly before, her husband told her that this would be a great trip for her to tag along. She could kind of explore the city while he was speaking and working. So she made plans to explore lots of the historical sites. She wanted to take a bus tour of the city. So by all accounts, she was sincerely looking forward to this trip. And the trip actually wasn't going to stop there. Right after the conference, they also had planned to go to New Jersey to visit some friends. So this was sort of like an extended fun trip for them as a couple.
Yeah. It seems like it's a fun setup, actually. Because
Yeah.
initially, when you first like heard it, did you think it was like strange that she was accompanying him on a business trip? Because that's how it hit me. But now that you're saying it out loud, I'm like, wait, maybe this isn't actually all that weird.
Yeah, not at all. Only because I feel like my mom used to do that, like on big trips.
Really?
As long as like we were grown up, or like if she could get coverage for us, like with our grandparents or something. If my dad was going somewhere and she thought it was like a cool place and she had never been, as long as he had like a room, she could go. I guess
it makes sense. Yeah, I just never thought about it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it can be weird if like you don't know any of the people that are there. But I mean, I think that was kind of the case. So she was like, I'm just going to go do my own thing and explore the city all day.
It sounds like. It sounds like she was like, it's fine. She's like, go and do your conference, speak on this panel. I won't be participating. She's like, I'm going to go see the city. And I think that's kind of rad.
Yeah, same. So, but I do think it's important to call out that not only did she have like this trip where she's kind of, bopping around accompanying her husband, but then she also had these friends that she was looking forward to. So it's like two layers that make it just like super weird when we discuss her eventual disappearance. Because I think we always kind of interrogate when some of these people go missing and they have something planned. It's like, did they really have that thing to look forward to? Or was that just kind of like a cover or something?
Yeah.
Front,
I guess. Yeah.
So to me, it's like those two things. It seems like she was really gearing up, to go for real. But on April 17th, 1997, Jeffrey and Judy were all set to travel, and they arrived at Boston's Logan International Airport for a 1:30 p.m. flight. But when they got there, Judy realized she had forgotten her ID. And at the time, FAA regulations had just changed to where you were going to be required to have your ID on you to fly, which I can't believe that had just become a new thing. And it always baffles me that there was like a time where you could just show up to the airport and basically walk on the plane with no ID, no security.
Was this like late 80s or 90s at this point?
Late 90s. We're in 1997.
97. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I only thought of that because of D.B. Cooper and like how easy it was for him to get on a plane without any real identification.
I know.
No bag check.
It's so crazy. Like back in like my mom used to talk about that, like when her dad used to go on trips, they would all just walk straight into the airport and wave him off, like literally on the tarmac, basically.
That's crazy.
I know.
That's crazy.
But I think it's a really important element of this case that we can call into question. Did she really forget her ID? Or was it deliberately forgotten? And then again, if it's a new rule, maybe it was more understandable, but Judy really liked to travel. So I would think, A, she was probably pretty aware of like knowing to bring her ID, aware of regulations, or B, she would just be so stoked for the trip that she wouldn't dare forget her ID. But maybe I'm focusing too much on the ID. I personally think it's a little bit strange. But what do you make of that? Do you think I'm reading into it too much?
I don't think so, to be honest. I think every little detail when it comes to a strange case like this is super important. So to me, that does read as something, and it could be nothing, but I would rather that we pick it apart and decide it's nothing than not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Something about it when I read it just hit me in my gut because she seemed like she was so excited for the trip. That's like the one thing.
Wait, so are you leaning towards the idea that it's like, her excitement is a cover, and actually her deliberately leaving her ID behind was an attempt to get out of the trip last minute?
After the research I've done, I think I lean that way, but I'm still not sure. I mean, with everything that we'll talk about, I mean, I'm still open. It's open for debate for me, but it just seemed like such a strange thing to forget. And she was not going to have enough time to run home and grab her ID and make it back in time for the flight. And Jeff was very hesitant to go without her, but she insisted, and she said, I'm going to get myself rebooked on a later flight. And she did, and that was going to take off at 7:30 p.m. She was apparently adamant that she not mess up his conference schedule, and I'm sure he had dinners and events that night, and she didn't want him to have to miss those due to her mistake. Keep that in mind, too. In most of the research I read, it was all kind of like Judy felt like it was her burden that she had like messed up this trip. So then I think that kind of also paints a picture. I try to put myself in her shoes, and I think I would probably do the same thing. I would probably say, just go ahead without me. But the only odd detail I read was that when she eventually arrived to Philly, and she does that night as planned, she does get there, she had bought Jeff flowers as an apology, which I don't know if that just reads like thou doth protest too much, or like kind of signals something greater. I don't want to read too far into it. I'm trying not to get ahead of myself, but I don't know what you think about that.
Interesting detail. I'm going to hold that one in the bank, but I'm latching on to a few things that you're saying that are sticking out.
Anyways, so she got in pretty late that night, and the next morning she slept in while Jeff went to the hotel lobby to get breakfast. When he came back up to the room, Judy was awake, and they went over their plans for that day. It was going to be Jeff's first full conference day full of panels and meetings, so Judy was going to use this day as her big independent exploring day. And she told Jeff that she specifically had plans to go visit Independence Hall, the Liberty Bell, via a flash bus, I guess is what it was called, the tour bus. And it would take her all around the city. And then she would join him later that night for one of the conference events that he wanted her kind of like on his arm for. And it was a welcome cocktail party. And they made concrete plans that she would be back by 5:30 at the latest to start getting ready for the event. Now, keep in mind, she had planned to be gone all day. And she reportedly left the DoubleTree right around 9 a.m. and was wearing tennis shoes. She was sporting this kind of signature red backpack, which you can see in one of those pictures. But she apparently loved that bag, always had it on her. And it's an important detail when determining potential witness sightings later on as well. So let's fast forward to 5:30 that night. Jeff is back in the room. He's awaiting her return. He's actually shocked that she didn't get back prior to him, just thinking she was probably going to be pretty tired from running around all day. And time is starting to pass, and Judy is nowhere to be found. There's been no communication that she's running behind or anything. And I actually tried to figure out if she and Jeff had cell phones, and they didn't. But I was just curious because that was sort of the era where having a cell, it wasn't common, but I thought maybe, like Jeff's a big time attorney. Maybe he can afford a cell phone. And maybe if there was some light shed about the, communication they had that day, it could indicate if there was something more nefarious at play or not. But they didn't have cell phones. And 6 p.m. rolls around, and Jeffrey decides to go down to the cocktail party alone. Perhaps an odd choice, but maybe he just thought maybe she's down there already. Or maybe it was just important enough that he didn't want to miss it and thought she would show up eventually. Now, according to Jeff, he spent the first hour of that party going back and forth from the party to their room to see if she had made it back. And sometime at around 7 p.m., he starts to get really worried. And he decides to go to the hotel concierge, and he asks if they could call around to some nearby hospitals and see if something happened to Judy that day.
Hmm.
Could she have gotten hurt while she had been touring the city, which she reportedly had a bad knee? I actually was thinking of you when I read this. It was a bum knee. You always say a bum knee.
Oh,
But
I was like, wait, do I have a bad knee?
no, but it always cracked me up when you say a bum knee and one fluttering eyelid.
Hmm.
But she had a bum knee. And she could have gotten hurt that day. I mean, being on her feet, walking around throughout this large city. So I also
Totally.
just want to call out, she's 51 at this point. So I don't think that she's really at an age where she's going to get like super disoriented and forget where she is. And her
Mm-mm.
family confirmed that she had no history of that either. But in terms of physical stamina, I guess that was a lot for one person. But I did try to see if she had any history of that. And I didn't see anything about that.
Huh.
Now, sadly, none of the hospitals called reported a Judy Smith. So Jeffrey decides to call Philly police and he files a missing persons report, which, as we know, in many places, and Philly is one of them, there's a 24-hour grace period that's got to occur before any resources are used and the person is officially determined missing. Deep breaths, creepers.
Again, like my blood pressure
I know.
needs to be studied. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I know. It's
Even in the context of how weird this is. Like, she's not a runaway. Like,
No.
she's like,
No.
something's wrong here.
right. Now, like I think most loved ones would do, Jeffrey decides that he's going to go search for himself if they're not going to go do anything. So he didn't have a rental car. So he ends up driving around Philadelphia via a taxi cab. And his first course of action was to follow that flash tour bus path that she had taken. Nothing. No sign of Judy walking around anywhere. So he returns to the hotel hoping that Judy would just be miraculously in their room. Empty room. That
Oh my God.
feeling of dread that we see time and time again in these cases, I personally, it just like makes my stomach turn. That realization of a loved one being missing, that reality is starting to set in deeper and deeper. But I think what just is like gut wrenching to me about this case and so many others that we look at is when you're in a place that's not your home.
Mhm.
Because you know you're eventually going to have to leave and figure out how you're going to continue searching for that person without physically being where they went missing.
Not knowing yet your landscape. I mean, how do you, I always think about this in these cases. How do you even go to sleep on the first
I
night?
have no
Like,
idea.
What are your thoughts as you're drifting off? What is the best case scenario that the best case scenario is that she's angry or wants to leave him and she like shacked up in a hotel or something, you know?
Right.
That's
right.
the hope at this point.
I know. I always think about, for some reason for me, I always think about Natalie Holloway and like her parents having to take that flight back from Aruba. Like, how do you even?
I can't even think about it.
I know. I can't
think
even.
about it.
It's
It actually is so upsetting.
I know. It's super upsetting. Thankfully, I will say the one silver lining, I guess Philly and Boston aren't like super far away from each other, at least by plane. I think it's like an hour plane ride, but still just super upsetting when you've got to leave.
Yeah.
So after several days in Philly, Jeffrey decides to return to Boston, and he ends up hiring 3 different private investigators to continue their search for Judy. His children, Amy and Craig, are also part of the search, and this really got me. Her kids would go back and forth to Philly pretty frequently, and they would search for their mom by bike. So they would rent bicycles, and they would just ride around all over the city, checking shelters, hospitals. And this is really heartbreaking and dark. They would check morgues, just looking for their mom, Judy. And again, I can't imagine the dread. And I really just admire her children for doing that. I think most kids would do that, but I think it takes a whole lot of bravery to be able to make those trips time and time again, never knowing what you might discover, whether that's closure or that your mom's disappearance is going to continue to be an unknown. I don't know which is worse. And would you do that? Would you?
Absolutely. I would imagine so, that I would do quite literally anything I could to look for a loved one. Thankfully, I hope that no one, myself included, is ever involved in something like this. But it's why telling stories like this is so important. But God, that must be so awful.
I know. I was really amazed that they would just, like, basically whenever they had free weekends, they would go up and search for her.
Yeah, I'd also never heard of somebody searching for someone on a bike. I think that's kind of interesting, and I almost wonder if it might be helpful because you're going so slow, you can really take in your surroundings, I guess, in specific areas.
Yeah, well, I think that's why. I think it's also that like you can I don't know if this is why they did it, but I think you can kind of slip into like alleyways and nooks and crannies where like somebody could be, sleeping behind a trash can, or somebody could be just like hiding basically. And you have a little bit of an easier way to find them. And actually maybe it's faster. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's faster to travel by car, but maybe just zipping around if you're kind of in the same vicinity.
Like you said, though, cutting through alleyways, getting to the other side of like a group of buildings. Like,
yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah. Now, in addition to the 3 PIs he hired, Jeffrey also made close to 10,000 flyers that he faxed and mailed across the northeastern seaboard to different media outlets, news organizations, and thankfully media outlets in Philadelphia reported on Judy pretty frequently after she went missing. So there were plenty of tips that came in before their next major breakthrough in the case, which would come a couple of months later. But during this time, there were several reports of a homeless woman with a red bag seen in Philly. There were other women that were, quote, like disturbed or disoriented that people described as looking like the photos of Judy Smith. And there was actually one tip of a sighting of a homeless woman in an area called Penn's Landing, where she looked so much like Judy from the photograph provided to the family that they actually flew in to try and find this woman. And her son was the one that discovered her. And when he saw her from afar, he said, I definitely thought it was my mom. And then after getting closer and interacting with this woman, discovered that it wasn't, which
really
is awful. So heartbreaking. I can't imagine that.
But she did have a red bag, you said?
Did have a red bag, which I mean, lots of people have red bags. And I also want to say, like, Judy is, and this is no slight to Judy, she's pretty, like normal looking. She has a lot of features that a lot of people would have. So maybe kind of makes it hard to distinguish, but.
That's right. She looks very sort of generic for who she is and her age, I think. She looks brown hair, kind of generic, like white mom type.
Yeah. Yeah. So that could have also played a big part in it. But there was another tip that came in from a cashier at a Macy's in Deptford, New Jersey, which was about 22 miles outside of Philly.
I was going to say, I was like, that's a bit of ways away.
Yeah, well, I guess it is a ways away, but it's not like so far away that it's completely implausible that she could have gone there. And I read that it was on a bus route that Judy could have, in theory, taken, I guess, if she wanted to like bop over to a department store after her tour of Philly that day. But the cashier said that a woman whom she believed to be Judy Smith had come into the Macy's and that she joked that she was buying clothes for her daughter and that her daughter didn't really like the clothes that she normally picked out, which to me, that's a statement I would remember. And it's very specific. Now, when police questioned the daughter said, yeah, I mean, that is something my mom would say. And I don't like it when my mom picks out clothes for me. That was sort of a running joke between us. So police did hold on to this for a little bit. But unfortunately, with no CCTV footage, they couldn't definitively confirm that this witness statement was real. And that's a theme here. No CCTV footage in this
late 90s
case. Yeah.
Problem.
So it also kind of made sense that she could be in New Jersey because of that trip that she had coming up right after the trip to Philly, like to go see the friends that lived in New Jersey.
Totally.
But it just didn't make any freaking sense as to why she would go there early without Jeffrey when they were going to be going in the next couple of days.
Unless something was going wrong upstairs.
Right. And baby, I'm going to need you to strap in for this because it's about to get absolutely bonkers.
Okay.
Fast forward 5 months later in September of 1997, and a young man and his father were hunting in the Pisgah National Forest, which is all the way down in North Carolina, right outside of Asheville, 600 miles away from Philly, mind you. And they come across what appears to be skeletal remains. The remains were partially buried, and unfortunately, animals had gotten a hold of the body and scattered some of the bones. But most of the remains were buried in a shallow grave. Those remains were sent to a North Carolina medical examiner, and based on dental records, it would be determined that these were the bones of 51-year-old Judy Smith.
Shut up. Are you kidding?
I know.
What? I truly thought this was a disappearance case. I had no idea a body would be found in North Carolina.
in North Carolina. And when I tell you, like,
What?
Pisgah National Forest, I only know of it because my younger brother used to live in Asheville and is like a big hiker, as you know. Like, it's dense. Like, Pisgah is a very dense national park.
I'm trying to think, because it's reminded me of the Zeb Quinn case, which also took place in Asheville.
Yeah.
And I think the Pisgah National Forest was also a part of that case because there was a whole conspiracy that when Zeb Quinn was allegedly maybe shot or possibly buried, I think it happened out in the Pisgah National Forest, is what they suspect. That's the conspiracy.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to it also in a little bit. I don't think he was part of the Zeb Quinn case, if I recall correctly, but
Zeb Quinn was like years later. This
later.
97.
Okay.
Yeah, Zeb Quinn was like early 2000s.
Okay, because there is somebody that like could have been in the forest like doing weird things, but I don't think it would have overlapped with Zeb Quinn. But I was just wondering in my magic mind.
In my magic mind.
So
they don't get a plug this week. So.
I know. That's Shell's plug. Yeah. So somehow Judy had made her way all the way from Philadelphia to Asheville, North Carolina. She had several wounds and cuts, which looked like stab wounds. She also had stab wounds that appeared in her ribs and on her bra, which was still found on her body.
Oh my God.
She wasn't totally decomposed, by the way, because I tried to look that up. I mean, there were definitely
5 months later.
5 months. She wasn't totally decomposed.
What time of year did they originally go to the conference?
That was
it
April? So this was in September.
She made it through the summer and she wasn't decomposed.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's assuming that she died 5 months later. 5 months earlier.
Yeah. I mean, I just was shocked. Kind of like after we had done the West Mesa bone collector, I was like, well, I wonder if she was totally, I'm imagining just pure bones. But no, they said that she was found like with partial like clothing still on her body and stuff. It's very weird. This
is such a sinister case too.
I know. There was no ID next to the remains. So they didn't ID, I should mention this, they didn't ID the body as Judy's right away. The remains were actually discovered, and then articles were published about those bones and remains being most likely those of a 40, 50-year-old-ish woman. And an ER doctor in Franklin, North Carolina, reads this article, and he happened to have been one of the doctors that had received one of Jeffrey's flyers all those months prior. And he ended up sending that article to Philadelphia police and basically just wrote them a note saying, hey, I thought you guys ought to check this out. These two things could possibly be related.
What are the chances?
What are the chances?
Like, that's not even a lot of information to go off of. It's like, it's a woman possibly in her 40s or 50s. Like, how would you ever connect that? That's crazy.
I know. Leave it to a North Carolinian. No, I'm just kidding. So a Philadelphia detective, then he got that letter, and then so he requested the dental records from Jeffrey, and that medical examiner that was located back in North Carolina ended up confirming, yes, these were in fact the remains of Judy Smith. So let's just pause there. And I don't even know if you have any initial thoughts as to how she got down to Philadelphia, from Philadelphia all the way down to Pisgah, or just any initial like theories that are bubbling up. I'm just so curious to hear what you think.
Well, my initial theory was that any of what happened to Judy was of her own volition, and maybe she was having some kind of a psychotic break. I am throwing that out the window. I no longer think that whatsoever, because it sounds definitively like she was the victim of foul play and an abduction if there are stab wounds on her, right?
Yeah.
It has to be.
Well, I definitely think foul play for sure, but I wonder if there was still an element of a psychological break there, where had she just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Like she had a break and then somehow over the course of months had made her way to North Carolina. And then that's where she met somebody and it was the wrong place, wrong time, and they caused her harm.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wonder. But there's so many different avenues I feel like we could go down with this, which we will do, but just super bizarre.
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I'm so lost with this one.
I know. And like, why pick North Carolina?
Well, it almost... I'm trying to think if I remember reading anything about... You said it's right outside of Asheville, right? Where this happened.
Yeah.
Is Asheville known at all for any kind of like underbelly of some seedy stuff that goes down there, like a sex trafficking ring? Because that was what came to my mind of like a Philly abduction, major city, woman who's alone. I mean, it's not entirely likely, but it's possible. I'm just trying to think about the transport. Like somebody who's having a psychotic break, how do you get from Philadelphia all the way to North Carolina unless somebody has abducted you? and is taking you there for some strange purpose.
Exactly. And especially somebody that was like physically kind of, not that her knee, I don't know how bad the extent of her knee was, but I mean, it wasn't somebody like physically super capable of like, let me just hike my way down to North Carolina or really like muster the energy to get all the way down like across multiple state lines.
How long does 600 miles take to drive? That's got to be like 5, 6, 7 hours, right?
Yeah.
Driving.
I would say even more. I would think driving from, because Asheville's all the way on the west side of the state, going from all the way on the very East Coast down to Asheville, I imagine that takes like at least like 9 hours.
Yeah, I don't think she hiked that.
Yeah, no way.
At all.
So her family is, of course. Oh, and I should also mention, I think there's like a map on the second page that shows you kind of like the whole.
I scrolled down because I didn't want to like go straight down, but then when I saw North Carolina, you mentioned it, I was like, I think I can shift.
Yeah, you can shift. So her family is, of course, absolutely horrified and shocked that she was found this way and all the way down there. But it gets even weirder. Police also revealed to the family that she was found wearing thermals and actual hiking gear, which her husband was able to confirm was a completely different outfit than what he had seen her leave in that day that she was going to be touring Independence Hall and the Libertyville.
Oh, interesting.
And another strange detail, remember that red backpack she was always kind of seen with?
Yeah.
Well, they ended up finding another backpack, but it was blue. There was also a very nice pair of Bollé sunglasses over by the body, which those are like very nice, like outdoorsy people I know wear Bollés, and they're not cheap. They were found all the way kind of like strewn over by the body. They didn't recognize any of these articles. And truly, aside from the dental records, they were wondering if it was even possible that this was really Judy. The second piece of information that really confirmed it was her, besides the dental records, though, was she was found wearing her diamond wedding ring. It was still on her finger, which had special engravings on the inside within the band that Jeffrey was able to confirm without a doubt was hers. She also had
so lost.
I know.
Lost.
It gets even weirder. She also had $167 cash on her, which made sense because Jeffrey had remembered he had given her $200 that morning when she went to tour Philly. But like I mentioned, no sign of her ID, which you can imagine paints a very weird picture for police in terms of determining a motive. Because if this was a robbery gone wrong, why would they leave her wedding ring on her? And did they just not see the $167 cash? But then police start to wonder, is this staged to look like a robbery? I, for one, feel so baffled by the motive since nothing was taken. I mean, I guess it could have been, meeting someone on the trail and it goes wrong, kind of like the Delphi case or something. But what does your gut initially tell you?
I mean, it was probably way too late in terms of decomposition to maybe tell if there were any signs of sexual assault. But that was the only thing that came to my mind of a potential motive. Because, I can't imagine that somebody would harm her and it wouldn't be to rob her.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it might have been a very violent murder as well. If there are multiple stab wounds all the way to the ribs through her bra.
Yeah. I truly, I just don't understand why they wouldn't have taken anything except the ID, unless it was around and they just didn't find it. But
or if she like lost it or ditched it.
That's
prior,
true.
It's possible.
Yeah, that's true.
The cash is strange too, because I can almost in a twisted way, tell me if you think differently, but I can almost in a twisted way understand not taking the wedding ring, because when you have that, and if it's like specially engraved and this is a high profile missing person where there's publicity, if you pawn it, it will be traced back to you eventually.
That's actually a really good point.
I mean, unless you like have some jeweler instincts, you know how to like remove the diamond, I suppose. But if you pawn it, it will be traced back to you. I can speak from not personal experience, but I know of specific personal cases that
the
I've
voice
seen.
who did it.
I certainly do, as do the police. But the cash is really strange because nobody traces cash like that. So unless they didn't see it, like what you said.
Yeah.
I don't know. How are you feeling?
Well, I was going to say, can we also talk about the totally different outfit and like hiking gear?
Well, that's what I was going to say. And also the sunglasses too. Nice pair of sunglasses.
Because that's another weird thing, because in my mind, I was like, okay, what if she just comes across like I don't know, some weirdo guy that's hiking the trail, very into, outdoor gear or something.
Mhm.
But why violently just kill someone like for no reason? Because I mean, I guess in my mind, I was like, the type of person that would do this would like want to take the cash off of her, want the ring. But is it possible that, and I don't want to read too much into like the sunglasses, but those are really nice sunglasses if they belong to the killer.
Mhm.
Could this just have been somebody that was like, just had a moment and wanted to be violent with somebody on the trail?
It's possible. So you said they were Bole sunglasses? Is that
Mhm.
how you pronounce it? Are
Yeah.
those like outdoor sunglasses or something?
They're like a very specific brand of like, they're like, they make like ski goggles and stuff. They're just not like a
Okay.
normal brand that you would find at,
Interesting.
like the mall or something. Well, maybe you would find them at the mall
Like
now. but-
REI or something might have them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if REI was around back then. They probably were. My first thing is I was wondering, I was like, I wonder, are those glasses like gender neutral or if they're women's glasses or men's glasses? Because that could tell us a totally different story.
Yeah.
But it may have been a detail they omitted because like it wasn't relevant, or maybe they were just women's sunglasses, but that is strange.
Yeah. I think I did see, I watched an Unsolved Mysteries on this. I do think it was a reenactment, but I think that they were kind of like gender neutral glasses.
Mhm. A lot of like,
kind of like
I feel like
thin.
outdoor glasses kind of are.
Yeah. Now, let's move on to the theories.
Might be. I'm so sorry for
I know.
your poor
Creepers.
Chaz.
They're probably like, God, this is a never ending cold. No, this is, we're recording this early, so I'm almost at the tail end of the flu. She's almost gone. Okay, so let's
Sue
move
found
on.
dead of tuberculosis by tomorrow morning.
She never made it to Christmas. She didn't even make it to the Christmas special.
It's so sad.
It's so sad.
Some little
darling.
cookies or something.
Oh my God. Literally wearing my little cookies or something. Okay.
Sorry, I'll let you press on.
No, you're good. So the theories. Of course, we have to look at Jeffrey because he was the last person that saw her alive.
Mhm.
And the husband is always somebody that you want to investigate. But Jeffrey had a credible alibi. He was cleared. There was no concrete evidence indicating that he had anything to do with her death because he was present at the conference and multiple witnesses were able to testify that they saw him for several days in Philly, both working on searching for Judy while she was missing and working on the search for Judy while she was missing. And the other component to this was that Jeffrey was also morbidly obese. So for him to have physically taken Judy down and hide her body all the way in North Carolina seemed highly unlikely to investigators. So now that we've seen this before in other cases, but most of the couple's friends and even their children said that they were a very happy couple. They had been together for over 10 years and they had just gotten married. So they were very much in their honeymoon stage. So it didn't seem like there was any crazy motive there. But I want to look at that a little bit further. I do think it's bizarre that this happened pretty much right after they got married. And the only reason I question is that forgetting of the ID in the morning, the apology flowers, I just kind of wonder, was she having, I guess not cold feet because she had already gone through with the marriage, but was she kind of having second thoughts like, maybe I don't want to be a wife. I got married too fast again. I don't know. Or could she have had a mental health crisis? This is, I think, where I say it kind of reminds me of Aunt Diane or Lars Matank, but I think it's possible that she had realized she had made a mistake getting married and she just kind of quickly wanted out of her life and she decided to run away. I just don't know why in God's name she would have picked the Pisgah National Forest. And I also didn't read anywhere that she was particularly into hiking or very athletic, but I guess it is possible to run away and decide you want to explore and take on a new adventure, kind of like find yourself in nature. But it just seems like this would have been a very odd place to pick randomly after you had just talked with your husband about all the things you were going to do that day and the trip that you had planned after.
Well, this didn't happen immediately after either, because when she went missing, there's possibly like months and months and months where she could have been traveling almost anywhere. It's only 5 months later that she's found.
It's
dead
5
in the
months later.
forest.
Mm-hmm.
And it's through the summer and she's not decomposed. That would suggest to me, and I'm curious what an autopsy would say, but that she hadn't been there for very long.
Oh, interesting.
In the heat of the summer, in the wilderness, your body will go away very quickly.
Interesting.
I would wager that maybe she had been in that forest for maybe a couple months dead at
Mm-hmm.
most, maybe
Mm-hmm.
in the heat of the summer.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point to make too, because I guess I was thinking in my mind, and we'll talk about them in just a second, but most of the witness statements in that elapsed time period come from people in the Asheville area. So it seemed like she was in Asheville. But that's that's a great point. Like, she probably, especially because of how long it took her to get down there or before she was found, she could have definitely like bopped around to other states and just kind of like made her way down gradually.
Or she could have like relocated and just tried to like start a new life in Asheville. And maybe that would explain actually why she ditched her ID, because if she's living under a different identity, why the hell would I need my government license?
Yeah. Except we'll get to this in just a second, but she says her name to people. She like says exactly who she is. It's so weird.
I'm lost again.
I know. Okay. So, well, let me take us. I'll go to the witness statements in just a second.
Crazy.
I know.
This is crazy.
Let me talk about this is a kind of not a crackpot theory. It could have definitely happened, but just throwing this out there kind of as like devil's advocate theory. There was a man known as the National Forest serial killer, and he's on that last page. I think very creepy looking dude. His name was Gary Michael Hilton, and there was some speculation that Gary Michael Hilton, who had killed someone in the Pisgah National Forest, among other national forests, in 2007, which, granted, that's 10 years later, but that he may have killed Judy all those years prior, because his killings at other national forests, not Pisgah, but other national forests in South Carolina started in 1998. So just a year after that. There's never been any evidence that can link him directly to Judy's case. Only speculation based on the similarities of like the profile of the victims that he would go after. And also just, I guess, proximity wise. And, it's kind of weird to be killing people in national forests, I guess, and that being your thing. But that's one other theory that we can talk about. I mean, there's not much to go off of there, but in the event that it's not a mental health crisis or it wasn't just like a random thing.
He's a very scary looking man.
Very scary looking. Very scary. But interesting to think, I mean, she would have been his first kill, because I think he killed 6 other people by the time he was caught in 2007. And if it wasn't clear, the person he killed in 2007 was in Pisgah National Forest.
Got it. The reason it feels kind of credible to me, actually, and somewhat backed up, is that if it was technically his first kill in 97, the way that Judy was left to me indicates a really sloppy job, possibly a first timer.
That's interesting.
To really panic in the midst of a violent kill where you're not really stabbing to immediately kill somebody because you're running on adrenaline. Maybe you're just violently stabbing directly into her chest and like panicking. And then by the time she's dead or dying, you bury her. You said she was found in a shallow grave, and that's your first thought, as opposed to like collecting the money or the wedding ring. At that point, she might already be buried. And he's like, nope, screw it. Like, I got to get out of here.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
That's the first thing that came to my mind. I was like, I think whoever did kill her, this might have been one of their first kills.
Yeah. And from what I read too, like all the items being kind of strewn about, I mean, I guess that could have also been animals maybe, but it seemed like kind of a sloppy job in general.
Like a struggle, like maybe unplanned to an extent. Interesting.
Now, I do want to talk about that time that elapsed between her going from Philly down to North Carolina, like we were just kind of talking about, and some potential witness sightings of Judy and her state of mind at the time, according to these witnesses. So, according to a couple of folks that claim to have seen her, and I think this part is really juicy, 2 witnesses claim that they had seen Judy in the Asheville area. One was a woman that was a retail worker at a souvenir shop named Joanne Stucker, and I think there's a picture of her there for you. But
Joanne.
She said, get that coffee, baby. She said, get that coffee, baby. She said that Judy had come into the shop and she was very nice. It didn't seem like she was at all delusional or disoriented. And she actually told her, my husband is an attorney. I was just up in Philadelphia visiting him. We're from Boston. I was just at his convention, but I just decided to come down here just to explore. See, like, what?
I'm trying so hard to like download something and make sense of this. This is so strange.
I know. And such a random little shop, like this little tiny souvenir shop. And I gotta say, like, I guess I will say a lot of these details are public knowledge at this point. So this woman, Joanne, could have just come forward making this up.
Mm-hmm.
But I watched her also in an interview. She did not, she seems to me, and I know you can't just go off of this, but she seems to me that's like the type of person that is pretty quiet and like would not just like come forward with a statement just because.
It's also like less likely, I feel like. I mean, it to me seems possibly very rare that people make stuff like this up for attention, or if they do it, it reads as such, like it's very transparent. So I believe it.
Now, let me see.
But she was sure that it was Judy. She really thought it was Judy.
Yeah, she was sure. Yes.
Like,
and she said, my name is Judy.
It was Judy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
It's so weird.
Do you think I'll let you keep pressing on with another theory, but
no,
I was going to
please.
ask you, do you think that maybe, and I'm creepers who are mental health professionals, please weigh in on this. Do you think it's possible she could be going in and out of like a fugue state where maybe she's having a mental health crisis where she's very out of it, doesn't really know who she is or like what's going on for a period of time, and then she's lucid, but isn't really aware of like how dire and strange her circumstances are, that she's like considered a missing person?
Yeah, I think that's totally possible. I also think it's possible that when you kind of make that mental jump to where you're going to like run away from your life, you almost feel not like empowered to continue to lie like that, or like it's a hard thing to describe. I know I always kind of phrase it as like believe your own myth. Like she's believing that like she's still with Jeffrey, even though she's like mentally totally checked out at that point. Like she's like, oh, it's so weird to think about.
I wonder like what actually diagnosis wise, like what could be going on in her mind if that was happening.
I know. Well, oh, never mind. I was going to say, did Aunt Diane I was trying to remember what she said to like her sister on the phone, and if she kind of said something adjacent where it was like a truth, but it wasn't the truth.
I think she was talking to either her brother, I think brother-in-law maybe, on the phone, and she was basically just reassuring and saying that everything was fine, everything's fine. Reassuring. I was actually thinking about that case recently. The strangest thing to me about that is that everybody has the theory to say she was a secret alcoholic because she had so much alcohol in her body at the time of the crash. What was so disturbing to me about her autopsy was that none of her organs that would be affected by alcohol showed any signs of a chronic alcoholic.
So weird.
It was like on that day, and that day specifically, she just decided to down a bottle of vodka.
That case, every time I think about it, I feel like I'm about to like spiral out. It's one of those things where like, and I mean, same with Judy Smith, but it's like the human mind when it gets pushed to the brink, what it can like trick itself into doing and what it becomes capable of. It's just, I don't think Judy Smith is as scary, but
no, but I mean, in its own right, like it's interesting to talk about the two cases side by side because something could have been happening in secret that nobody really saw because she presents as like in the same way that Aunt Diane did, where like she's on top of everything, where she likes her job, she has a happy marriage. It's interesting, the idea, if she was coherent and cognizant, and this isn't a mental health crisis, that she just wanted to leave and abandon her life, why she would do so and how she would be so comfortable to leave her children behind in this kind of anguish if she was aware of it.
I know. And her daughter Amy was like, my mom and I had just been talking about like me getting pregnant and having kids soon, and like she was so excited to be a grandma. I mean, that can all be presented. That can all be, saying the right thing.
Yeah, it could.
But they were very close.
Yeah. I really don't know.
So weird. Well, let me throw you more. The second sighting comes from a sandwich shop owner in Asheville. And this man claimed that a woman who totally matched Judy's description drove up to his store in a gray sedan. So at some point, I was to say, at some point, this woman now has a car and purchased $30 worth of sandwiches, which I guess throw away the car
For
thing
the,
for a second.
but for the
Because
90s. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I was going to say it sort of tracks for me because if she was planning to be gone in the woods for a really long time, I guess $30 worth of sandwiches back in the 90s probably would have bought you a lot of meals if you're going to be out in the mountains.
How long are those sandwiches going to last?
I mean, listen, if you get a PB&J, I guess that could last for a couple of days. Kind of made sense to me to stock up on food if you didn't, but
maybe. Well, why do people believe that she was so adamant to like disappear to the woods and it wasn't just a 1-day hiking thing? Because there was no gear found or anything. There's no like campsite or any residual stuff to suggest she was going to survive out there.
yeah, I guess there's no gear, but I mean, she had at some point picked up like hiking boots and like
right. So I thought it would be like
thermals?
a 1-day. I thought it'd be like a 1-day hiking excursion, not like she was going to camp out there
Yeah,
or like hide away.
I don't know.
Do most people think that?
I was just say I don't think most people think that. I think maybe I'm leaning that way. That maybe she had decided to like go out into the. But again, I don't think that she was going to be out there for like weeks on end. I thought maybe she wanted to go out there for like a couple of days. I'm not quite sure,
Like
but
an
yeah,
excursion.
no tent or what. Which I guess in the summer or it's September at this point. That's not totally implausible that like you could just sleep on. Hello, Outward Bound. I guess you could just sleep on like leaves or whatever, but. It's very weird.
A class action lawsuit is pending, by the
know.
way.
I
Every
was
time you
like-
bring this up,
I
there's
know.
an attorney who's listening and they shudder and they think, we need to get the class action started today.
I know. Oh God.
I don't, the car thing, I want to go back to the car thing. That's more interesting to me. Like, what is that?
Yeah, I have no idea. I literally
Where did she get a
saw that.
car?
This is only from this witness statement. I didn't read anywhere else that she had a gray sedan.
And did this witness statement, so it sounds like this witness statement came relatively, or when did it come? Do they know when this person might have seen her?
I don't know when exactly he would have seen her.
Was the
I
other
guess-
one, the department store one, known, or was that also like kind of just a statement that she gave probably?
The department store one, like the Macy's one,
I think or actually, hold on.
or the
maybe
souvenir shop one.
the souvenir shop. That's what I meant with Joan Stucker.
That was supposed to have been in September, like right before she went missing,
Oh my God. So
or
late.
before she was found.
Oh my God. So she might have been out there for like weeks then.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So wow. Okay. So that's like confirmation that she was only out there for weeks. That's crazy.
Yeah. But isn't that so weird that she was gone for 5 months? No other witness statements from any other cities or states.
Well,
Just
kind of
Asheville.
as a testament to like what you said before and what you were suggesting, she does look somewhat generic in some ways,
Yeah.
which works to it's her disadvantage because although this case was probably publicized, it's not at the level of like a Casey Anthony or like a John Benet Ramsey where like your face is an imprint that people will recognize across the country.
Yeah.
If you were passing her, you might just think that's a normal woman who lives locally.
Yeah. And sadly, again, no CCTV footage for either one of these places. So we don't know if it's Judy. So I feel like the most significant clues left behind and really all that we have to go off of are the fact that she was found so far away, a totally different change of clothing, and that the killer's DNA was not left behind, nor the murder weapon. And I know it's tough to sort of hypothesize what could have happened when it's so cut and dry in terms of what we know and what we don't know. But I just think it's really interesting to break down what her thought process must have been on that day she left Philadelphia. And also to wonder, could she have possibly been forced to go down there by somebody? Kind of like what you were saying. Could she have been taken in Philadelphia and then taken all the way down to North Carolina to be killed? It's just insane to me to think about how far away those places are from each other, to find her there all those months later. And I guess I would just love to hear, because we're kind of wrapping up, which of these theories, if you can choose, which one you think you lean towards most, if any of those witness statements feel credible, and if there's anything else you think we can glean from the earlier details about the marriage or anything else.
I don't think Jeffrey's involved, personally.
Okay.
I don't get that sense purely because of, I mean, I know you mentioned that it might have been like it might have been physically very difficult for him to carry this out. And also for him to do so covertly over a period of 5 months where we believe she might have been alive. So And he also acted very quickly on the day of. I totally tracked with the idea that he was like, maybe she's just running late from like a tour that ran over. So I'm going to go down to like shake some hands and say some hellos, but I'll come back and forth upstairs to the hotel room to meet her. But then by 7, that's when you know something's wrong. I totally rule him out. The thing that throws the wrench in this for me is that I believe Joan's witness statement very much so. That, and purely it makes sense just from proximity of where Judy was found. Judy was in Asheville. I believe that. I believe Joan saw what she saw. The sandwich shop one, I'm a little like hazy on because it would just tell us so much more. If she did pull up in a car and that was her, I'm spinning into a whole other host of theories where I'm like, is it possible there's a secret lover? Is it possible this wasn't? I mean, because she's only seen solo, it sounds like, in these instances. So there's nobody, if it's a trafficking scheme, there's nobody who's really like got a gun to her head in town unless she's truly in like a fit of Stockholm syndrome. I'm all over the place with this.
I know.
Secret lover gone wrong is something that I'm leaning towards in the back of my mind.
I was just going to say, that's so funny you say that because I thought the same exact thing. And the only thing I could find that kind of, I guess, not disprove, because it's not disproven, but there was a good friend of hers, and I'm forgetting what her name was, but she gave a statement where she said, and if you're thinking about there being another man, just go ahead and like scrap it. Like Judy would have never done something like that. And I'm like, I don't know. This feels awfully like, it felt like there was so much trepidation to kind of like go on the trip, like with the ID going away. And then almost like, to me, it read as like, then coming on the trip, bringing the flowers, like it just feels very anxious to me. Like that was her out. And then she ended up going back in and kind of like going back to Jeffrey. And I just wonder if there was somebody on the other end that was like, come with me, come be with me. And it was this kind of like ding dong, like trying to figure out what she was going to do. I don't know.
It can go two ways. I think, like, in my mind, I think I was initially thinking this is like a long distance secret affair and they're like plotting to run away together. I'm actually curious. And I wonder if there'd be a way that we could find records on this. If there was any, because they left from Boston, right? Oh, damn, big city. But curious if there were any other men from that area, maybe that went missing around the same time. And maybe this was actually somebody local to the city that she had crossed paths with. And the two had conspired, and possibly the whole thing about the leaving of the ID was so that she could fly with him and they could talk more on the plane about like what the actual plan of action was once they touched down in Philly. Get to Philly, she's able to break away, he's able to break away as well. I'm not sure what this hypothetical man's like life circumstances would have been, but this is their pact to get out of Philly together and make their way down.
Oh my God, you're making my head spin at the thought of there potentially being somebody else that this was like all schemed with, like from the jump.
I mean, I have to assume that's more logical than like she met somebody out on the road and then like to the point where like she's got a car, maybe it's his car. Like so much of this to me reads as like setting the stage so that she was the loving wife, the doting wife, got the flowers. Like really, some of it feels a little performative on a level to where I have to wonder, was this a dual plot to escape? And then the other question is, how does that then lead to them in the woods in North Carolina where she's murdered?
Right.
Was it possible she was having second thoughts, missing her kids, thinking about wanting to go back and had vocalized this, and it would in turn expose his side of it, and then maybe expose him to his family, that he ran out on his family. And maybe that was... I'm really like throwing daggers right now. Like,
no, but why do I feel like there's legs? I
spinning.
feel like that has legs because I could see a scenario where they're down in North Carolina and she's eventually like having second thoughts, and this person is thinking to themselves, okay, well, you know what? I just have to get her out the woods and kill her, and then I'll be done with this.
Right. Like she's the loose end to tie off, and then he can go on. He doesn't want to go back to his family or whatever life he had back in Boston. Let's say he's from Boston. So that would be the motive to sort of kill her. And it would make sense if he was a first-time murderer in the way that he did it.
Okay, also one other thing. She only had spent like $40 at that point, and she was gone for 5 months.
Well, assuming, that's the other thing too, like assuming that that 167 or whatever was found on her is from the initial $200 pot that she was given. That could just be a strange anomaly that like looks like a false story. That was my thinking too. It would be strange if that was true, but I don't know. I think to me, it makes more sense that it was a secret lover who wanted to kill her to tie off a loose end to keep her quiet so he could continue to be on the run. And that eliminates the motive for wanting to actually steal from her. And the whole thing of the wedding ring still being on her finger tells me some story that if this was true, if she did run out and it was a secret lover thing, maybe she was still, from the get-go, having a difficult time leaving her life behind. Still thought about her husband, still thought about her kids, about her work back in Boston. I'm spinning up this wild narrative, but it's only because this is such a senseless story that I'm like, I have to try to make sense of what happened here.
To me, that makes sense. Like, I never thought about that during the research, and that's a very freaky scenario, but it makes sense because I just couldn't figure out what the motive was if it wasn't money. Like, it seems like a crime of passion, like killing somebody off fast, but
it's either somebody who wanted to kill, like just wants to murder, or it was a sexually violent attack, like sexual assault, or it's this weird convoluted lover scenario of like, I have to protect my secret, which means you have to go away.
Well, speaking of lovers, sadly, her husband Jeffrey ended up passing away in 2005 without any new evidence being unearthed about Judy's case. Her children continue to search for more answers, and I sincerely hope we do get a break in this case in the future, especially for our mental health personally. I'm like, now I need to know.
It's a really weird one.
I know. And Creepers, I'd love for y'all to weigh in on what you think could have happened, what the catalyst was for Judy's disappearance. I'm so curious what y'all think, and how she could have ended up 600 miles away from where she was last seen. But baby, that is all I've got on the mysterious disappearance of Judy Smith.
Oh, that is I can't believe I haven't heard about this one. This is so strange.
I know. It's kind of an old one, and I feel like there's not a ton to go off of. Like, it's just like a lot of like kind of short bursts of information. Like, there's nothing that goes like a huge through line all the way down to Philly. It's just kind of like little pops of information to go off of, but they're all pretty juicy. Like, they all have things about them that are very unnerving, but super weird.
I would actually say the discovery of the body in this being a murder adds so much more confusion to it. It would almost be easier to speculate and try to explain if she had never been found, because it would suggest like, okay, well, it was a mental health crisis and she's sort of like faded into a homeless society where people don't see her anymore, or it's the secret lover scenario. This just adds a whole different twist to it that I didn't expect.
Yeah. I'm going to be laying awake tonight thinking about the lover scenario.
I'm curious.
You just did something to me with that.
Well, people kind of dispelled it seems like, from the get-go, from what you said, right? People were like, that's not her. That would never happen.
Yeah, but it's like, ain't that always the case with these cases?
Well,
it's
I mean, if
always
you cover your tracks.
Thing. Yeah, you cover your tracks. And like, people that are going, if they are experiencing a mental health crisis like that, like you always say, they get really good at hiding and lying, and that's kind of the name of the game.
I actually read something really interesting recently. It was kind of adjacent to this in context, but it was talking about people who are at a precipice of a crisis and they're about to do something very drastic, albeit if they're going to run out on their family or if they'll take their lives or something really, really drastic. They actually become very clear and very happy and joyous and calm in like the days to weeks leading up to it, because mentally they know they're almost out of their current situation. Yeah. They're at the finish line. So people talk about even people who have taken their lives, they talk about people becoming very joyous and joking in the hours before they do it, because they realize that they are so close
to
being out. Yeah, it's relief. Yeah. So I did wonder, like, her sort of jovial like disposition that she presented with and the buying of the flowers. I just wonder if and the excitement of like setting everything up to say like, I'm planning this, I'm excited because you're going to have a baby, if you're going to get pregnant with you and your husband, your daughter. I wonder about what was going on there.
It's so weird, especially with just a husband that seemed so nice too. Like, I mean,
on the outside.
But I really will say, I mean, you do get a feeling when you watch, especially after all the cases that we cover with the husbands and the boyfriends and the whatever, but you watch him and he just seems like such a gentle soul. He even said, he was like, listen, we had disagreements and arguments, but by all accounts, she seemed really happy. Like that day that we were getting ready to go on the trip, she was really excited.
I wonder who the secret lover, if that was true, could have been.
I
wonder if they're like how she would have crossed paths with this person if that was
could
real.
have been an ex, but
it's possible.
Yeah.
That's interesting, huh? What do you feel in the end?
Well, now you've got me thinking. I'm like, it's definitely the secret lover. I do think that there was a feeling of what have I done in terms of getting married again. I do think there was a feeling of, because it seemed like it taking 10 years for her to cross that threshold to get married again paints a very interesting picture for me, because she got married very quickly the first 2 times. And I feel like what that says to me is that she probably didn't want to get married again.
It is always shocking to me that this is the easier solution than divorce. To be like, I know what I have to do, not get divorced. I have to abandon my children and run to North Carolina. That the logic of that always throws me.
I know. But I think that is what my gut says.
Just
regrets.
regrets.
Creepers. I need creepers to weigh in, because I know that they've got ideas.
I want to hear them. And
Yeah.
I want to hear the mental health professionals who listen to this, what their take is on what could have been going on with Judy, and maybe if any of the small little behavioral details about whether or not they do think she left the ID behind intentionally, the buying of the flowers as an I'm sorry, which also told me something strange about her relationship to her husband. And you kind of hinted at that too.
Yeah.
Where you were like, maybe he has a temper that we don't see. And she was a little nervous to like have something go awry. He's already stressed about this trip, so he has to buy. She buys the flowers as like a real like gesture of like, please don't be mad. I'm really sorry.
Yeah. Well, because even if
something
he's
about
not,
that read strange to me.
Yeah, because even if he's not like a very temperamental person or very angry, even if he's the sweetest person in the world, it definitely tells us something about their dynamic, that she felt like, oh God, I need to like show.
Like she couldn't just make the mistake.
Yes, she couldn't just make the mistake. And that's very, I mean, as somebody that can relate to that, like to me, that paints a story about, you know, the type of person you are, that you might, it might just be like, not that I would like run away, but it might be the type of situation where if you feel like you're constantly having to, you know, I guess apologize, that you want to kind of get out, you know?
Totally. And it could be really overwhelming and scary too, the idea of approaching a divorce against an attorney husband and just what the next like few years of your life would look like.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what their situation was in terms of a prenup or a clean break, but if they didn't and they were going to get divorced, I'm assuming that there would be quite a fight, because he would owe her. Well, actually, I don't know how much money he would owe her, because they hadn't been married that long. I think alimony is contingent on how many decades or years you've been married, correct? I believe. Something like it's like within like the 1 to 10 year threshold, you're entitled to a certain amount in terms of like keeping up your lifestyle. And then there's the 10-year plus threshold. I think you're entitled to a different amount.
Okay.
And maybe it's different state to state. But I also was reading recently that if you get remarried after you're divorced and receiving alimony, it can jeopardize your alimony. They can take you to court for that.
Oh, interesting. I actually think I did. North Carolina might be one of those states.
Where if you get remarried, they can take you to court to like renegotiate your spousal support. Yeah.
North Carolina has weird laws like that. Like even pretty sure we're still one of the states where if you prove infidelity, you don't get any alimony or anything like that.
Interesting. Isn't that the case for like a lot of divorces though?
I guess so, but why did I think that was getting phased out? Or in a lot of states, that's no longer a thing.
I don't know. Actually, I know nothing about divorce, to be honest.
Thank God. Thank God neither one of us know anything about divorce or marriage yet.
Well, I was like, because I don't want to get married. So I was like, why do I have to learn about divorce? I was like, you're not getting this check either way.
By the way, that's a good word that we need to add to After Dark is prenup.
Oh, prenup. I
gotta add that.
Divorce, babe. Divorce.
Divorce. Well, baby, maybe that's a good place so we can cap it.
On divorce. Yes.
But creepers, thank you so much for joining us again for another Friday ep. And we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up because we got to get ready for our Christmas special.
We do, yeah. For anyone because this will come out after, we're recording this first, which will premiere the week after, and then our Christmas special, we're gonna get dressed now, and then that's gonna come out this week.
Yes. The hackery is back, y'all. It's alive and well.
Oh,
I'm barely alive and well, but that's always, yeah.
You just wait until you see what I'm about to throw at you in maybe like, I don't know, an hour. You won't be alive or well.
I'm so giddy. Well, babies, we should just go ahead and say goodbye.
And good luck.
Bye, y'all.
Bye, guys.